Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law showed up to Christmas at my house when they knew they weren't welcome. After that, am I the jerk for dropping out as my brother's best man a couple of days before his wedding? And after that, no. You tell me right now exactly what's taking so long. Your wish is my command. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to crash anyone's Christmas party. Bah, humbug. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law showed up to Christmas at my house when they knew they weren't welcome. I was trying to keep things to 2 posts, but I realized while compiling everything that part 2 was just too long, so I've divided it into a part 3. For those who commented en masse for me to get cameras, I will, when I can afford it. I'm still in financial recovery from buying a house last year, and as far as I know, good cameras need a decent computer to record to, and I don't have anything more than a 3-year-old laptop that runs Windows 10. Yes, I'm aware of doorbell cameras. That will be the first kind I get. For those who kept saying that I should have just gotten my brother and sister-in-law arrested, the only reason I didn't was because they are parents. Their kids need them. And if Dan was arrested, he'd likely lose his job. And without that, his family has no money. And sister-in-law has a 3-month-old baby right now. Neither of them need to end up in jail. But you don't need jail for revenge. Police can help, yes, but I got payback without filing a police report. Would I be this merciful again? More than likely not, and they know it. I decided to wait on making an account and posting until after the new year, just in case more stuff happened. And it did. As previous readers know, my sister-in-law was making passive-aggressive posts on social media that were obviously directed at me, especially after sister-in-law had her 4th baby in November. She was posting the same repetitive nonsense over and over again. She just found semi-clever ways of rewording it. But she pretty much just kept regurgitating that she was tired of living with my parents, that there isn't enough space, she needs her own house, blah blah blah. I know I sound dismissive, but live through what I have with these people, and you'd be ready to sarcastically play tiny violins in front of them too. They're just that bad. And since I waited until January to make an account, more happened just like I thought. I stated before that I'd invited half the family for a Christmas Eve party at my house, and everyone I invited all came, even though it was a fairly long drive of around 3 to 4 hours for them. But they wanted to come and show me their support. I was praised by them a lot for how hard I'd worked to get a house of my own, and that they were sorry for everything I'd went through. I was asked why I didn't just take my camper and drive the 3 hours back to them instead of living pretty much homeless for so long. And I had to sheepishly admit that I was very attached to living around here, and I had my best employment opportunities in this area. My hometown doesn't have a lot of great job opportunities in my field, if any at all, and I wanted to make my own way as much as I could. An answer that they overall accepted. We moved on to having a rather nice party, the best I'd been in years. Some relatives even brought CDs of great Christmas albums, and I have to say, the one my uncle brought of Ray Charles was my favorite. He sings Christmas songs like no one else I've heard. It was a grand and happy time. I felt like, for once, I could just forget my past issues and enjoy the moment, but I wouldn't be writing this if it had stayed that way. About 2 hours into the party, you know who showed up. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law popped in trying to look all smiles. They didn't even knock, just walked right in through my front door like they were meant to be there. I shut off the music and told them that they needed to leave immediately. They begged to stay and said that they had brought gifts. One of my uncles stood up and yelled at them before I got another chance to speak. And he said that they don't deserve to be in my home or my life after the crap they tried to pull months earlier. And he was backed up by several other relatives. Mind you, this guy is my mother's brother, and he used to love her to pieces until he found out about the crap that went on between me and my parents. My grandparents, mother's parents, as old as they are, hurriedly got in between us and said to my parents that if they want to make amends with me, it's far too soon. And they've never been more disappointed in them than they were this past year. They had hidden their favoritism for my brother from prying eyes for a long time, but no one was fooled anymore, and they needed to make a serious effort to try and actually treat me like a son if they ever wanted to be in my life again. Then they turned to Dan and sister-in-law and said they've seen the repetitive nonsense sister-in-law keeps posting about. They're tired of it and to just let it go already. My house will not become their new home. Sister-in-law went back to her old standard of crying and had a pity party about how she should be the one living in this house and not me. She plopped down in a chair to have a tantrum and say it wasn't fair I got this house to myself when I have no family of my own and she has 4 kids that need more space, and she just wanted a better place to live in and feel like a real mom. It was petty of me, but I loudly pointed out that she sucks as a mother because she lets my mother do most of the parenting while she sits on her butt all day drinking, playing on her phone, or going out and spending all of Dan's money. And she has the nerve to complain about it. I even joked that I'm surprised her baby doesn't get drunk from drinking her milk since she drinks so much booze, which I admit went a bit too far because I got some stares. And sister-in-law demanded to know if I was calling her a bad mom. I said the evidence speaks for itself, and if she wanted to be able to afford to move out of my parents' house someday, then she needs to put her college degree to some use, get a job, and learn to save money. My mother already does most of the childcare for my brother's kids anyway, so she'd have plenty of time after her baby gets a little older. My brother's eldest kid, who's 7, ran up and started kicking and screaming at me for yelling at his mom, and he kept going off on me about how his mom said that I was the bad guy who made her cry and didn't let them live here. That's when my brother grabbed his son to pull him away, but all the other relatives jumped back in, and this sort of turned into a family intervention against my sister-in-law and brother. She was crying, her new baby was crying, her kids were crying. Heck, even Dan was very nearly in tears from the verbal lashing he was being assaulted with. He ended up just sitting on the ottoman I keep shoes in by the front door and looking like a complete wreck. He couldn't look anyone in the eye. He couldn't even say 2 words to me. Not with a whole house filled with angry people ready to judge him if he tried to let out his inner golden child again. If they weren't there to get in his way, I'd bet this would have ended up a repeat of when he tried to order me around and tried to take my house months earlier. By this point, though, he had been so thoroughly humiliated that his and my parents' reputation in the family was completely destroyed because the masks were all off now. Soon after, my parents, brother, and sister-in-law all left in defeat. The party resumed, and we all avoided speaking of what just happened for the rest of the evening. Since most of the adults had been drinking, everyone stayed the night in my house. I even let some of them sleep in the camper so there'd be enough space. I admit, it also makes a good guest house. My relatives all wanted a tour of it earlier as well, and they said they couldn't believe I'd been living in it for around 2 years. I got a lot of questions about it, like what summer and winter was like, and so on. I was up earlier than anyone else Christmas morning and had a fresh pot of coffee and some ibuprofen for those spiked eggnog hangovers a few of them had. I was complimented on being a way nicer host than my parents ever were, and we all agreed to do this again next Christmas. After Christmas, sister-in-law did finally stop making posts that were obviously digs at me and deleted all of the old ones as well. But shortly after the new year, she more recently made a new post complaining about how she had tried to convince my parents to get her a camper like I did, so it could be set up in the backyard so Dan and his family could use the whole house as their family home. Well, a taste of one's own medicine is never fun, because my parents turned that idea down, vehemently I hear. No one is going to push them out of their own home, let alone their master bedroom. The post was only up for a couple of days before sister-in-law removed it, and she has hardly posted anything since then. She loves to complain, but if a tree falls and no one is around to hear it, can it still complain? Sister-in-law, I guess, has realized there's no point in doing it when no one hears her anymore, and Dan can't afford to move his family out on his salary alone anytime soon. If they end up expecting another kid in the next few years, I won't be surprised. Things mellowed down for me since then, and I've even invited friends over for a poker night. I suck at poker because I can never remember a darn thing about it. But so what? We get to drink beer and eat junk food while being merry idiots. We all loaded up on Whoppers from Burger King and just had at it the best way 4 grown men can when they just want to have a good unadulterated time and get drunk. I think maybe around summer I'll look into possibly dating someone. I'm not exactly getting younger here. Fingers crossed that goes well. My camper just sits idle in my yard now, and I admit, there were some times I went out there just to spend time in it. I did live in it for 2 years. It's like my second home, and maybe one day I'll actually get to use it for camping like it was meant to be. I've never been camping. My parents considered it a waste of time, so it'd be completely a new experience for me. This pretty much marks the end of what happened. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law have all been staying very clear of me. In fact, they seem to have gone back to acting like I don't exist, like they did before I bought a house. Not like that bothers me at all. It's better that way. But they'll inevitably come back in some way. I know they will. I just wonder what kind of stupid thing they'll do next. If anything notable like all of this ever happens again, I'll make another post if this account is still active. I hope OP can have a movie made about his life. Can you imagine how good it would be? Am I the jerk for dropping out as my brother's best man a couple of days before his wedding? I'm 36, and my brother, who's 30, got married this past weekend. I was supposed to be his best man. The wedding was 12 and up because they didn't want to have to deal with toddlers and such, which is fair enough. A lot of guests do have younger kids though, so they decided to have a venue nearby with a professional sitter if parents wanted to drop their kids off there. My wife has some injuries that make her slow to respond and understand what others are saying, and she needs help sometimes with her food. I'll cut it up into small pieces. This doesn't mean she's nothing, and she's a smart, capable woman. They had the rehearsal dinner. At the end, my sister-in-law pulled me aside, saying she had to discuss something with me. She said they told us about the additional venue they'll be having for their wedding. I said yes. Then she asked if my wife had any particular food preferences, and they would order extra food for her there. I was extremely confused and told her we already gave our meal choices, but she said my wife would be better suited at the second venue. I remember just sort of staring at her for a bit and asking if she was serious, that she expected my wife to be with the babysitter. Sister-in-law said it's not like that, and they're just looking out for my wife, and I don't have to feed her or anything, and can have fun at the wedding. My brother came over, and I told him I've literally never heard such crap, that they think my wife is a kid to be left with a sitter. Brother said it's for the best, and if I want, I can always go over and check on her. I told him if this is the way they're treating my wife, I have no desire to be a part of their crap show, and dropped out as best man. Well, all heck broke loose, and some people agreed that I was right, but my parents texted, called, everything, saying that they don't agree with this either, but it's their choice, and to get over my ego and still come. I didn't end up going. I did hear that they got one of the groomsmen to give a speech, and overall it was fine, but my brother sent me a text saying he expected better from me. I replied back saying I expected better from him. My sister-in-law sent a long text that I ruined their big day on purpose and made them look bad. Not the jerk. Sister-in-law ruined the day herself, nothing to do with you. Also, can't believe your parents' reaction either. OP. I mean, my parents didn't agree with this, but they said to put it aside for one day, and the wedding wasn't the place to make a stand, then yell at them later if I wanted to. A couple of others also said this, which is why I'm doubting if I went too far for not just attending and then telling them later. The last thing I wanted to do was miss my own brother's wedding, but I just feel like they're the ones that put me in this position. My wife always comes first. No, you tell me right now exactly what's taking so long. Your wish is my command. More drive-thru mayhem ensues last night at your local Mindy's. We've had a lot of terrible and weird things happen lately, and as our sister store we call Mindy's Ray Road is perpetually closed, we get our usual rush of customers combined with all of the mobile and Uber Eats and DoorDash and Food Schlaps and you name it spilling over to our location. It's hectic. We're running out of things. It's literal mayhem. I take order number 521 as I begin to assemble their drinks, as is the process. I notice that the 4 drinks they ordered suddenly can't be made due to the flavor being out. I need to change out the syrup to the freestyle machine. Just as I realize the machine's running out, I hear the bloop that alerts me to the entry of a new customer in the drive-thru. I'm about to greet them, which I always manage to do within 2 seconds of approaching the speaker box, but these people were yelling right as they pulled up, saying, "Yeah, hello, hello." I lay a little louder into my already interrupted greeting, saying, "Hi, welcome to Mindy's. Please hold for a minute while I—" "Oh my God, you talked to the last guy," the customer chimes in. More attitude was in this than I can accurately depict. I usually say that I'll be with them in a second, but this time I was about to say that they'd need to hold on for a couple of minutes due to my situation. They interrupted, so I just took care of the things that I needed to. I managed to get the keys from my manager to open the closet to get the drink mix and pour the 4 drinks and then set the next order. While I was running all over the place, I heard increasingly angrier grumbles along the way. So I did my due diligence and said, "Just another minute or two," every so often. I thought this helped. Evidently it didn't. As soon as I'm back to my ordering machine and re-greet the customers with a, "Thanks for waiting, how can I help you?" I hear the following ear-piercing rant. "What in the world took you so long?" I reply as kindly as possible, despite having someone threaten me earlier this week. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about that, but I can take your order now." She went full local again, saying, "No, no, no. You tell me right now exactly what's taking so long." Enter malicious compliance. What could have been an easy 30 seconds of ordering and then beginning to make her family's food turned into a debacle now, thanks to malicious compliance, I'll tell you exactly what's taking so long. Okay, well, I didn't start off in drive-thru, actually. I was on the grill first. I really liked the grill. I missed the freedom more than anything. You know what I mean? This was a rhetorical question, but I know that the machine that connects them to my headset was still on and unable to not be because the line was so backed up. So anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, well, the customer 3 cars before you ordered a Sprite. Well, actually a Sierra Mist, but settled for Sprite. Because Coke products, you know? That Sprite was the last Sprite, and I knew it. So I tried to get a hold of my manager. I went on telling them the story forever. During this whole thing, I could hear an occasional beginning of a sentence or two, but look who all of a sudden didn't yell or scream anymore. Her frustration was at a boil though. I just didn't realize it yet. Somebody did boil over besides her, the car behind this group. They were honking the whole while. It was like a symphony of people telling their life stories overlapping one another. Samantha, my coworker, even chimed in and backed up how busy and crazy it was this week. I then finished with "I guess that leads us up to right this moment. Would you like to order?" They replied with an exasperated, "Well, I didn't mean your whole life story." Ask and ye shall receive. As petty and snide as this may seem, it was just what I needed to get stuff off my chest and let me prepare for the next group of customers who lie in wait to mistreat me another day. Am I the jerk for making homemade food for everyone except my brother's stepdaughter? I, 27 female, am not a professional chef, but I have taken a bunch of cooking classes and love making elaborate meals for friends and family. About 2 years ago, my brother Greg, 25 male, married Cheryl, 34 female. Cheryl has a daughter from a previous relationship, Becca, who's 9, who has several health conditions, including celiac and a severe dairy allergy that requires her to carry an EpiPen. Last weekend, I hosted a dinner at my house for my parents' wedding anniversary. I made a fancy 5-course dinner, and in addition to my parents, I invited 4 close family friends, Greg, Cheryl, and Becca, and my sister, her boyfriend, and their twins, who are both 8. Because of Becca's food restrictions, I found a restaurant in town that specializes in gluten-free, dairy-free, as well as other allergen-free food, and arranged for them to make a full meal for Becca that I could pick up in advance for the party. I've made a variety of specialty meals in the past. For example, keto meals when my friend was following that diet, and I liked the challenge, but knowing how serious Becca's restrictions were, I didn't trust myself to make her meal. I have ADHD and get easily distracted, and even if I used the wrong spoon or didn't completely wash some flour off of a bowl, it could make her incredibly sick. I thought the takeout solution was fine, but when I served the food, I saw Cheryl looking at Becca's plate with a stony face. For her part, Becca started eating and seemed fine. Cheryl whispered to Greg, and Greg asked if he could talk to me in the kitchen. When we got there, he said that it was unbelievable that I couldn't be bothered to make something for Becca, that they had been bragging about what a great cook I am to her, and that he knew I'd make keto, vegan, and other complicated kinds of foods in the past. Now she would feel left out because she didn't get to eat what the rest of the family was eating. He said that it was obvious that I didn't care about making his stepdaughter feel like a part of the family and that they were leaving. Greg, Cheryl, and Becca then left, which put a damper on the rest of the party. I felt like I did my best at the time, but in hindsight, I wonder if I should have tried harder to make Becca feel included since she is a relatively new addition to our family. Am I the jerk? For some reason, I read that and I felt sad for you. I'm honestly in disbelief you thought you did something wrong. You were incredibly thoughtful in how you handled ensuring she had a meal suitable for her. You have ADHD and are well aware that mistakes are so easily made, so to ensure you didn't seriously put her health in danger, you decided the safest option was to contact a restaurant to provide something. I can't stress this enough. You are not the jerk. Same here. If someone had gone to the trouble of making sure my kid didn't have a reaction to dinner, I would have been grateful, not upset. I don't have ADHD, but if I didn't cook for someone with allergies on a regular basis, I definitely would forget something. You are most definitely not the jerk, and it's sad they couldn't appreciate your effort. Not the jerk. If you accidentally made a keto meal wrong, it would upset their diet. It sounds like if you made Becca's meal incorrectly, it could have major medical consequences. You're not wrong for not wanting that stress on you. Did your brother understand the reason why you ordered her a special meal? That you were concerned about doing something that might make her sick? My sister-in-law has food restrictions, and I've never heard her say anything but appreciation when others have done something similar for her. He was very angry when we talked, so I couldn't get a word in edgewise. I spoke to Cheryl about this issue when she asked if I could make an allergen-free cake for Becca's birthday last year. I told her about my anxiety over possibly making her sick and offered to make flower decorations if she could find a suitable cake, which she did. I mistakenly assumed, based on this conversation, that she understood my hesitation to cook for Becca. Am I the jerk for being disrespectful to my boyfriend's sister? I'm 24, female. My boyfriend, Zach, 24, male, his mother passed when he was only 11. His father worked a lot, so Zach's older sister, Elise, who's now 30, basically became the woman of the house, for a lack of a better term. She cooked all the meals, cleaned the house, drove Zach to school and other activities, etc. She was extremely parentified, and I do feel for her on that front. She went to a local college. Because of all this, Zach and Elise are very close. He has a lot of respect for her. Zach and I have dated for nearly a year. We are very different in terms of backgrounds. He's much more reserved than I am. Before me, he spent a lot of his weekends gaming or just hanging out with a small group of friends. I tend to go out. I work hard all week and want to enjoy the time I have off. Zach is a shy, somewhat nerdy guy, and I do think I've broken him out of his shell a little, pushing him to do things out of his comfort zone. Elise and their father have made several comments about him changing. She's very nice and cordial when we see each other, but she's made several comments about Zach not needing to change who he is. Sunday, Zach invited myself, some of his friends, his dad, sister, brother-in-law, and niece over to watch the game. At one point, vacations got brought up. I mentioned I was trying to convince him to go on a 2-day local cruise with me, as he's never been on one. Zach reminded me he's not the biggest fan of boats. I pointed out he's never been on one, and we could rent one to take out so he could get used to it. He was somewhat on the fence. Myself and one of his buddies were trying to help him see it's not that bad. Elise butted in and said, "If he doesn't want to go, then I'm sure you can find someone else to go." I said I was pretty sure I could talk him into it. She asked why I would want him to go if he really didn't want to. I said, of course I would never try to force him to go, but it's just something to think about. She repeated that he doesn't like boats and that I should respect that. I rolled my eyes, not really understanding why she was so adamant on this, and said she needed to relax. She's not his mother. She shouldn't care this much about the situation. Elise was clearly upset by the comment, but didn't say anything else. The subject got changed, and I thought all was well. A little later, Zach asked for my help getting something out of his room. Once in there, he told me I was out of line for how I spoke to his sister. I said she was the one that was getting up in our business. Zach said that I kept pushing it and got upset, when I said, well, clearly she and your dad didn't push you enough to try new things. He said I was being disrespectful and needed to apologize to Elise. I laughed and said no, she needs to butt out. Zach finally asked me to leave. I did, aggravated. I really thought my friends would be on my side, but they said I crossed a line. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. You're saying, I managed to break him out of his shell, says a lot here. It seems like you're constantly pushing him to do things he wouldn't necessarily do otherwise, and I think this is not healthy. What's wrong with being shy and not wanting to do some things? Your way isn't the only correct way, and you did push him on this occasion too, and you were being disrespectful to his sister. I get that you want to get him out of his comfort zone, but ganging up on him with his friend trying to get him to do something he doesn't want to is called bullying. It's you deciding you know what he'll like better than he does and ignoring what he has to say. He's the one who should have spoken up, but likely didn't want to embarrass you by telling you to shut up. His sister stepped in to stop a bully. So yeah, you're the jerk. You're the jerk. Your boyfriend does not like boats. If it's clear that someone doesn't want to do a particular vacation plan, you attempting to pressure him into it makes it extremely clear that this is a vacation for you, not the both of you. Find something you can both enjoy, which may or may not require you both stepping out of your comfort zone, but to a lesser degree than something one person has expressed a strong dislike of doing. Remember that not only is his sister not his mother, but she's extremely close to it. You are also not his mother. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to get over himself and to quit holding a 10-year grudge? My brother-in-law, married to my sister, is a general contractor. About 10 years ago, my dad and brother were building a deck at my parents' home. They asked my brother-in-law if they could borrow his skid loader when he said no. They prepared the ground as best they could without the skid loader, but got to the point where they couldn't go on without it. They went to my sister's house to ask again, but found out brother-in-law was out of town. They talked my sister into letting them borrow it, so she took them down to his construction lot and they hooked it up to my dad's truck. This next part I'm not sure of since I don't know much about towing, but from what I was told, Dad's truck wasn't big enough or powerful enough to tow the skid loader on the dump trailer, so he lost control and wrecked. The truck, trailer, and skid loader were totaled. The insurance was barely enough to cover the medical costs in the truck. There was none left over to cover brother-in-law's stuff. When he got back to town, he exploded. He threatened to sue, and things just went downhill from there. My parents are not rich, and he wouldn't have gotten anything, so in the end, Sister talked him into letting it go. However, from that day on, he would have nothing to do with our family. He doesn't come for birthdays, holidays, nothing at all. Next month is our parents' 50th anniversary, and we're planning a big family gathering to celebrate. We're also chipping in to send our parents on a cruise to Mexico because they've never been out of the country. I spoke to Sister about it the other day, and she said she's coming with the kids, but brother-in-law is not coming. I was fine with that, but when we were discussing their portion of the cruise money, I heard him yelling in the background to deduct their portion from the cost of the skid loader and dump trailer. That really upset me, so after my call with my sis, I called my brother-in-law and told him to get over himself. I told him Dad and Bro made a mistake, but that was 10 years ago and he needs to let it go. He said he'll let it go when they give him the money that he lost. I told him he's a jerk for holding on to a grudge and putting money in the way of a family relationship. Sister called me a few minutes ago and said they're not coming and that I was out of line. We argued for a bit, and that's where it stands. I don't think I'm wrong for telling him to let go of the past, but they're not coming to the anniversary party, so now I'm not sure. You're the jerk. Your family stole $50,000 in work equipment from your brother-in-law. They didn't pay him back. By the sounds of it, they showed zero remorse, and he should just get over it? You and your family sound massively entitled. Your brother-in-law is smart to cut the lot of you off clean. You're the jerk. So are your parents. They shouldn't have stolen his property, and yes, it was theft. They should have made him whole before replacing their own property. They should have apologized. They should have given him the money back at some point over the last 10 years. Would have considered everyone sucks here if your parents had made any effort to take responsibility. What's missing from your story is where your father and brother took accountability for their actions, which caused real damages for another person and worked sincerely to make up for it. If the insurance didn't cover everyone's damages, then after necessary medical costs, the skid loader should have been fixed because your brother-in-law was the innocent party. Instead, your dad put that money towards his own truck. Your brother-in-law was extremely kind not to sue. It's been 10 years, so how much of the damages have your father and brother paid back? If the answer isn't all of it, then not only are they complete and utter grade A jerks, but so are you. You're the jerk in this latest chapter of the story for blaming the victim for not just rolling over and accepting his awful in-laws' actual criminal behavior. Good for your sister for standing by the right person in this chapter. Karen keeps asking, "Why are you still single?" My response shuts her up quick. I, 36-year-old single female, get asked this question a lot, and since it comes from coworkers, extended family, friends of friends, then responding rudely by saying, "None of your darn business, sweetie," still doesn't seem to work. Not anymore. I try to keep good relationships with those around me for a number of reasons, but this question just ticks me off, especially since the reason for why I'm single is pretty awful, and so it's very personal. They feel sorry for me. I can see it because they list all my good traits, then say it's a shame no man is willing to win it. What the heck? Unfortunately, I get caught off guard a lot by people, especially women, asking this question, but since I can't control the fact that they ask, I really wish they'd just leave me the heck alone. I decided to use this method that I came up with very recently. For example, if a woman asks why I'm still single, I just tell her, "Because I still haven't met your husband or boyfriend yet," while acting somewhat flirty in the moment. So far, it seemed to shut them up. It's kind of passive-aggressive, yes, but I just feel some sort of power doing it. Well, a few weeks ago, my sister introduced me to her boyfriend's sister, and once she sits down, she asks, "How old are you?" I tell her, and she gasps, and goes on to ask, "Why are you still single?" I look at her and say, "It's because I still haven't met your boyfriend yet." She has a boyfriend, yay her, in the flirtiest tone I could muster, while also pulling the duck face pose. She looks at me in utter shock, then puts her coffee down while my sister stares at me like, what the heck? Conversation gets awkward, and a few minutes later she gets up saying she wasn't feeling well and leaves quietly. My sister blows up at me asking why I just said that, and I start arguing with her about how this woman was a snoop. She told me to get over myself and act my age and stop being childish, which she assumed is the reason why I'm still single and will always be, because no man wants to be with such a nut job. Her boyfriend said I upset his sister and is expecting apologies from me because of what I said to her. So, am I the jerk? I'm going to say a soft, you're the jerk. Yes, the questions are invasive and unkind, and yes, you have the right to your privacy, but there's no reason to be nasty about it. I 100% agree that people questioning why you're single are annoying and offensive. I get it, hence the soft, you're the jerk. But there are better ways to deflect or get someone to mind their own business. Personally, I'd use the why method. When someone asks you an invasive question, just say, why, in a neutral and curious tone. They will follow up with, I'm curious or something. Reply with, why. Basically, continue to ask why to every response and enjoy watching them flounder as they attempt to explain and justify their invasive interest. It's a similar technique to saying, I don't get it, can you explain it to me? When someone makes an offensive joke at someone else's expense, and watching them flounder as they have to explain why it's funny to be offensive. Eventually, one of two things will happen. They will get bored of the why and change the subject, or they will get frustrated. Either way, you keep the moral high ground, because no reasonable person can say you were being offensive by just asking why. The key is to keep your tone neutral curious, as though you genuinely don't understand the question. Try it and see. Everyone sucks here. It's incredibly rude to ask someone why they're single, but your response is obnoxious and trashy too. I agree with this. I can't comment on OP's situation and what she's dealt with, but would it be wrong to comment, it's a personal reason that I won't disclose, and leave it at that? If they pry further, then you say it one more time and leave if it goes any further. I think it is incredibly inappropriate that people continue to ask these questions to her, but I find it is always better to handle all things with class and strict boundaries. Well, who do you think is the jerk? Please let us know. Some people just can't mind their own business. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.